let's move into zone two training, which is critically important, I think, especially in the off season going into this first half of the year. I kind of do some form of zone two training all year because I basically am riding the cafes 80% of my race schedule. But so it's gained significant attention, especially in recent years with Pogacar and his incredible power at zone two, which is insane. I think he says like 320 watts zone two or something crazy. But
Hmm.
can you explain, what zone two training is and why it's considered fundamental or foundational for professional athletes and amateurs?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the root of it, zone two training has regained popularity recently. But it is probably the oldest school version of training.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, it was go ride your bike. More volume you do, the longer you ride, the farther you go, the better you are. And that was training. That was the whole concept around training. And it obviously training has evolved. Periodization has surfaced and taken the sport to new highs. And there's a reason for that. But that concept of you have to do the time to be good at the sport is a thing. Like you're on a machine. Each pedal stroke is going to benefit you forward. And as I mentioned before, the ability to have a platform to stand on is massively important because it dictates everything you can do. Recovery systems. Again, we're looking at fuel systems. We're talking about a different form of ATP or where you're pulling that from. You're looking at fat burning stores. You're looking at the ability to be most effective at that. And I think that's the other thing is aerobic training to me, or endurance training, or zone two training, or however you want to call it. It goes back to efficiency and being as efficient as possible, and then boosting out how long you could be efficient. So, if we talk about lactate, and lactate is a fuel source. You're talking about POG, and that dude is probably producing less than zero point 0.1 per like millimoles of lactate at 300 watts. That's what he's able to do. He's grown his aerobic engine to be able to do that. And of course, he was, genetically gifted with a lot of that, but he also has grown that out to be at that point, which is miraculous. And some of the best cyclists in the world also have that aerobic efficiency that you just have to have in the sport. Some athletes can kind of fake it and, do focus on other things, but for a lot of those GC riders and just in general to achieve a higher level of fitness, doing this volume is important because then you boost out your efficiency and then you're able to tolerate, more high intensity training and recover because you are the rest of the time not producing an overwhelming amount of lactate and you are using that as a fuel source. And then the impact then is just fine. The side effects of zone two training on a cellular level is that you're really making your body efficient at using fat and bringing that effectively, and then again going back and clearing lactate as well. So you're just tapping into more robust and a long range fuel source. And when you're able to do that, you're going to see your ability to do group rides and clobber on your friends and then recover and then go for a ride the next day rather than just sitting on the couch. But you need to build up your volume to be able to tolerate that. And that's why this system is so massively important. And this training model is so important as well. Really across the boards on periodization approaches, you have zone two in that approach. There really isn't an approach where those steady state miles aren't included because of how important they are. People will argue how much volume you need. There's this surgent of ridiculous volume in the gravel space, especially now. You've got all the top pros posting about 40 is the new 30. That's 40 hours a week, which is
Wow.
insane. It's just incredible volume. And I'm not going to preach that. I'm not saying that's what you or anyone needs to be doing. But that is kind of the new wave. So it has kind of gone to a new high, and I don't really know if that's really necessary right now. But you basically, if you're training for a 200-mile race if you're training for a 10-day stage race, if it's your first time doing 200 miles, if you're a pro doing 10-day stage race, or you're doing the tour, you need to be doing these big days. And that's when, if you aren't efficient, if your body is not efficient at burning these slow burning fuel sources, you will not feel great doing it, and you will kind of start to fall apart. And that is kind of the significant reason for this style of training.
One thing I want you to touch on, I know the answer to this, but it's better if you say it. You work with professional athletes. What should your power chart look like at the end of a zone two ride?
Uh, a power profile from a
Power
steady
profile
state,
chart. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, from like a standard endurance ride. I mean, it should basically be 100% of that time below. Um, really, I would probably say it needs to be below zero point 0.7 IF, 0.65 IF. So that's 65% or 70% of your threshold. Athletes. So I think one of your questions for me was like, what is, I guess, like the drawback or what mistake is commonly done with endurance training? And the answer is you ride too hard. That's the answer. See people ride 0.75 IF, and that's what they consider their endurance training. We as athletes really like round numbers. So it's kind of like pick basically what happens with athletes is you tell them what their zone two is. They go to the top end of it, and then they might round up to the biggest like round number. So they'll say, okay, 200 watts is actually my zone two, and then anything around it is fine, or 150, or 100, or 300, or whatever it might be. And it's like, well, actually, no. If we're trying to really get efficiency out of this response, like you actually don't need to be riding that hard. You can ride a little bit lower in your zone. You can do more zone one time and actually still achieve an outcome from it. But yeah, I see it all the time where athletes will really push their zone two rides. So then when they get to a high intensity session, they're flogged because
They're tired.
they already did 4 hours at tempo when they thought it was endurance. So I would say keep it in check. Again, it goes back to what is the purpose of the session. If it's just simply in like volume and efficiency and buffering and building out your platform, then heck, ride the low end of your zone two. Like have fun, just enjoy it. And then make sure you're fueling well is the other thing.
Yeah. And one thing I too would add is, you know, just because your average power says that you were in your zone two range for the entire ride doesn't mean it was actually a zone two ride. You know,
Yep.
if you got like
Yep.
10 sprints included in the workout, but at the end of the day, the average power was the zone two power. It's not as efficient as it could have been.
Yeah.